This is Steve Cochran, and this is a special edition of Live from My Office and the Deep Six. Stand by for that Deep Six episode featuring Patty Steele in New York and me, Steve Cochran, here in Chicago with 6 stories about what's going on in Ukraine. But first, a couple of thoughts from me. If the world suddenly changed, if everything you knew of the life you've lived so far went away in a matter of days, what would you do? Can you imagine having your life reduced to a single suitcase? Can you imagine being suddenly homeless because the home you know is too dangerous to live in now? Can you imagine saying goodbye to the people you love most because men must stay behind and fight while women and children become instant refugees? And can you imagine not knowing if your family will ever be together again? It's happening right now. And all of this pain and uncertainty has fallen on the people of Ukraine because of one corrupt lunatic leader who was so damaged by the fall of the USSR that he apparently has decided that union must be restored no matter the cost and no matter the insanity of his lies. If you need a visual, just think of it this way. You wake up tomorrow morning and you hear that America has invaded Canada for the free parking. It makes just as much sense. Kyiv itself is the capital of Ukraine. It's a city about the size of Chicago. There's young people, old people, rich people, poor people, tall people, short people. They have the same differences people have everywhere. But those differences don't matter now. The people of Ukraine are united in the only thing that does matter, and that's saving their nation. On paper, it's not even close to a fair fight. But the good news, the fight's not on paper. It's happening on the streets. And Goliath is having a pretty tough time with David. By now, you've heard about the Ukrainian soldiers on a place called Snake Island. There was a Russian ship that told them to surrender. They told that Russian ship to fuck off. And did you hear about the Ukrainian man and his truck who came upon a stalled Russian tank and asked him if they needed a tow back to Russia? Or the fierce grandmother who got in the face of a Russian soldier on her street and offered him sunflower seeds for his pockets so flowers might grow where he fell and died while in Ukraine. And what happens to the alleged superior Russian soldiers who are taken as POWs? Well, there's multiple videos of these men crying and saying they were lied to, that they were told they were actually on a training mission, but instead were sent to war. Meanwhile, their Ukrainian captors gave them cell phones to call home, to talk to their parents. And they told these POWs they would release them to their mothers if they came to pick them up. The greatest unknown here is, why is this happening now? Vladimir Putin's been a twisted, evil dictator since the day he took power. He is an absolute murderer. He's a thief. He has stolen billions, and many say has accumulated more money than Jeff Bezos. Well, so much for Russian communism. But that loose ideal actually ended with the fall of the USSR. Putin is, without a doubt, the world's biggest dictator. And what do the Russian people know? Well, it's hard to say because fake news is all he allows to be reported. Voter fraud is the only way he's remained in power. So why would the world's richest man, who's held power for over 20 years and is now in his 70s, why would he risk everything? What's in it for him? The theories include that he thinks this is truly his destiny. Does Putin believe that he is Russia's chosen one and that he must take back what was lost when the Soviet Union fell? Or maybe he believes he's out of time. None of us live forever in his twisted mind. If not now, when? We know he's sick. He's clearly mentally ill, but his COVID isolation and the insulated world of yes men that he lives in caused him to actually lose his mind. Or maybe he's physically or even terminally ill, and he's reacting to his own mortality. Look, I don't even know that the why matters anymore. What we do know is any hope that Putin had for a fast win that might set up his own blitzkrieg of Europe has been a colossal failure. His army's a mess. Part drunken, totally undisciplined, and part unwilling to kill their neighbors. The deserters have been in the thousands. In short, it's a mess. And they've been beaten back again and again by the Ukrainian military. Civilians are involved in this fight like no time I can ever remember. The stories you hear were probably like those that fought for us in the Revolutionary War, when untrained farmers and people from the countryside got together to fight for this new country called America. Well, you must remember that Ukraine is a new country too, barely 20 years old in its independence. And what certainly has to be making it worse for Putin is the fight against this world giant that he likes to be thought of is being led by a very small man in stature, Volodymyr Zelensky, a former actor and comedian. But wait, it gets better. Zelensky also happened to at one time have won the Ukrainian version of Dancing with the Stars. And he's tough, and he's not going anywhere. Now, this fear that Putin has indeed gone off the beet farm and is that crazy dictator with his finger on the button who could possibly push it, it feels way too real. We've already seen dangerous accidents and direct violence that could cause a nuclear accident. That unthinkable horror is made much more real by the fact that this egomaniac is being mocked around the world. And his fantasy tantrum just might include ending it all by starting a nuke-fueled World War III. So who stops him? It may have to come from the inside. His inner circle of yes men. They may finally come to realize this is beyond a terrible mistake, and they can't allow it to continue. But in the meantime, what will he do? He started this nightmare with no justification. He's paying an unbelievably heavy economic price. More importantly, his people are paying that price. Will the Russian people rise up against him? His highly cultivated image of a brilliant strategist that strikes fear in his enemies, that's over. That's been completely destroyed. But let's just hope he hasn't gotten to a place where he's asking himself, well, what do I have to lose now? I'm sure, like you, I'm moved and inspired by the people of Ukraine. They have shown us how to put others ahead of ourselves, and boy, is that a lesson we need to learn again, because we've lost our way. So in honor of Ukraine and the people in the fight, answer the question for yourself and your family and for your country. Given their circumstances, what would you do? I pray we don't have to find out. If you can help, I hope you will. At any rate, we continue now with this.
The Deep Six. 6 stories from your world in 30 minutes or less. Hosted by Patty Steele and Steve Cochran. The Deep Six is on.
This is the Deep Six. My name is Steve Cochran, and I'm happy to say hello to my friend Patty Steele in New York.
Hello there to you. Oh, why did I speak with that accent? That was odd.
Kind of thematic, I suppose, on some level, because today we try to do the Deep Six each week, and we thank you, regular listeners, to try to give you kind of an escape from the news. There's a story we can't escape from, none of us, and that's what's going on in Ukraine and the brutality of what Vladimir Putin has wrought upon the Ukrainian people. And frankly, it affects all of us.
It does. And the interesting thing about it is there are so many stories that are ones that are not necessarily covered in the news or that are on the sideline. And that's what we're hoping to bring you today. We have some interest, and I have a little quiz for you coming up too.
Wow. All right. Well, I didn't study.
Test your knowledge of something.
I didn't study, but that would make it like all the other quizzes I've taken in my life. All right. Item number 1.
The Deep Six. Story number 1.
We normally start with entertainment. This, in sort of a loose way, does involve that because there are, you tell me, celebrities involved in this story.
There are indeed. It's funny because we always, we sit back here and we eat dinner and we flip on the TV and we see all these celebrities, some of whom are just, putting their brand new yacht in the water or their big jet and putting their perfectly toned butt into the seats. And then there are some who really want to get involved in what goes on in the world. Yep. And some of us appreciate them for that. Some of us say, okay, really not your job. Just shut up and sing. But I have to say, there are a number who I really understand why they have gotten involved with Ukraine. First off, You have Maxim Shmerkovsky, who is a former star of Dancing with the Stars. Now, he's actually from Ukraine, and he felt that it was really important to be over there sending videos via Instagram so that we could see what was happening. And also, and this is the beautiful thing about that kind of communication, is that you begin to look and see these are human beings. These are real people. This isn't just some unknowable thing that's going on with a bunch of people. We don't understand their language and we don't know them. These are human beings with children, with homes, with schools, with all kinds of things going on. And suddenly, much like it could happen to us, they are being attacked from all around them by these massive Russian forces. So Max went over there and he was sending all of these videos. And then on, last week, he suddenly got arrested. And he never really shared why he got arrested, but it was most likely because he's over there and they're thinking, if you're here and you're Ukrainian, you should be a part of the resistance movement. And once he showed them that he had a US passport, they let him go. And so next thing you know, he was on what he called a crowded, sweaty train with mostly women and children headed to Poland. He got to Poland and he said that he was grateful to get there. And this is the thing that really struck me because I can understand this. He said he feels incredibly guilty for leaving.
Sure, because it's his home.
It's his home. It's his people. And on the one hand, you want to be safe. But on the other hand, you're so torn because, how do you walk away from that at an hour of need? So,
but the important thing is he was there, as was, and I don't
documenting it.
Yeah,
right.
Documenting it. And we know where his heart is and we know his intentions. And the same has to be said. And I'm telling you, this next guy you're going to tell us about, I want to not like him because he's
he's got a big mouth and he's a little rough.
He's so rough around the edges and stuff. And I only had a couple of encounters with him. It just wasn't a guy you'd go, hey, there's a guy I'd like to be stuck in an elevator with. But Sean Penn is doing good things, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, we know that he spent a lot of time and effort in Haiti in the aftermath of storms and earthquakes and everything else and starvation. And he wanted to tell the story of Ukraine. And this is something he's been working on for months and months, long before the attack there. And so he was over there. He met with the president of Ukraine and with a lot of people in the government. They said, Sean is among those who support Ukraine in Ukraine today. Our country is grateful to him for such a show of courage and honesty. So he was there right up until, this last week. And he decided, you know what? I really need to get out of here now because it was just getting insane. So he tweeted that he and his friends had to, the colleagues, people filming with him, had to abandon their car on the side of the road in Ukraine and travel to the Polish border on foot. He said, myself and two colleagues walked miles to the border after abandoning the car. And he had photos, which I saw, of the cars lined up for as far as you could see and just stopped on the highways. He said almost all the cars in this photo carry women and children only, most without any sign of luggage, and their car, apparently their only possession of value. So to just leave it, and get out in the cold, he did it because he can, they can walk, they can bring their stuff, and they got more stuff wherever they're going. So many people, only what is in their car and their children. Most of them had to leave husbands and boyfriends and fathers behind because that was the rule of law there, was that if you're 18 to 60, you can't leave the country. So it was interesting to see these people just, they're stars, but they're also trying to tell a story that, we all need to know more about in order to properly understand the state of the world, Yeah.
And I think in Sean Penn's case, he's gotten older. And as you get older, you have less tolerance for people who don't want to do the right thing. And I don't
think he's ever been a tolerant person.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Ask Madonna.
Not even as Spicoli. But
Right.
he just is, he's pissed off and he's going to do something about it. And frankly, we need more of that, not less.
Right. I'm with you.
And by the way, I know you enjoyed the story of bad guys losing stuff that they bought with money they stole, right? Don't you enjoy that?
Well, now, in fairness, I'm not certain that these guys stole what they have. They just happen to be wildly rich and most likely involved in some shenanigans inside Russia. We're talking about the Russian oligarchs who have
Oligarch is native language there, which means way richer than us. That's the technical definition.
And kind of like sketchy way of achieving all of that. So I was fascinated to see that the oligarchs, what did you tell me earlier, in the first couple of days?
In the first 24 hours, the oligarchs lost $39 billion when the Russian stock market and markets around the world crashed. Oh, what a shame.
A mere pittance to them. And of course, they're all buddies with Putin, who a lot of people don't realize is arguably the richest man in the world. He's richer than Jeff Bezos. He's worth well in excess, they say, of $200 billion.
Right. And the funny thing there is, if you pay any attention to Russian history, and I know what a history nut you are, he claims he makes $150,000 a year, which apparently is the Russian president's salary. And there's a small apartment that he owns in Moscow. And in photo ops, he's occasionally seen driving a pickup truck. Oh, yeah. Well, other than the 14 palaces and the people you've murdered. But to continue, the oligarchs prop up Putin. That's the whole way he stays in power.
That's the way he stays in power. And that's the way they continue to accumulate money. And I'm not going to say that they're all like that, but maybe they're all like that. I don't know. Anyway, so what I've been seeing is, they're losing money. Now they're afraid that their assets are going to be seized. So what they're saying is that these super yachts owned by Russian tycoons have made their way to the Indian Ocean, and they're around the Maldives and the Seychelles Islands. And they all started heading there after the sanctions kicked in. They said the biggest luxury yachts in the Maldives right now are all Russian owned. One of them, 459 feet long, belongs to a steel magnate. There's a 465-foot yacht owned by another steel billionaire. There's a banker who is there. They say 10% of the global super yacht fleet in the world is owned by Russian oligarchs.
So they're moving them because they feel that their fancy boats are going to be taken away.
Yeah, you can't take that from me.
Yeah. and in the big picture of things, it doesn't compare to the horrors that are going on there. But it is good for us because maybe not you, I can speak for me. I enjoy when a rich guy has a crappy day. And, it's a bad day when a rich guy has to move his fancy boat to the Indian Ocean.
Well, and here's the other thing. These guys also they're going to put the squeeze on Putin because they're going to see that, he's led us down a wrong path here because it's costing us. So
the Deep Six. Number 2.
The words nuclear war will stop you in your tracks, and they should. And for all of us here in America, literally on the other side of the world, it's incredibly frightening to think about what anybody grown up in the 60s had to deal with. And by the way, getting under your desk at school and ducking and covering is not a safe way to protect yourself.
Didn't they know that?
Yeah, you think, right?
Yeah.
But the word Chernobyl.
Yeah.
If there is a place in the world that evokes sadness and darkness more than Chernobyl, it's hard to find. And
did you see the Chernobyl document? It was like a movie actually on television.
Yeah, well, you're talking. Yeah, I was going to mention the 3 heroes that saved the world, but
exactly.
Before you get to that, I wanted to also mention why it's important, because people are going, hold on a second. Russia is concerned about Chernobyl. Chernobyl is this wasteland that's shut down that nothing can live there. Yeah. Everything is as it was. There's a huge Ferris wheel there that was scheduled to open within a couple of days or when Chernobyl happened.
Weirdly, you can visit as a tourist. I don't know why you would, other than incredible curiosity. But what happens to you? Do they put you in radioactive?
They put you in those hazmat suits, and you have a Geiger counter guide who walks you through a period for a very limited amount of time. But I'm with you. Go to Six Flags, go to Disney instead, because that's probably not what you want to do. But Chernobyl is important because of its geography. You know this story, right?
Right. Sure. That's a lot of people didn't understand, but it's only 80 miles outside of Kyiv. So it's in a really important position for the Russians if they are of a mind to continue trying to take over the capital of Ukraine. So there's that. And then
it serves as a staging area in some form, but it also is important because they need it as a point to encircle the country in the way on the big map room that Putin has somewhere.
Yeah, it's a strategic location.
Yeah.
It's not the site itself as much as the location.
So everybody's worried. Everybody's going, well, what happens if there's a stray missile? What happens if there's an accident and it hits Chernobyl? Well, that could be just absolutely devastating. The thing that people aren't talking about, the greater danger, there are 4 active online nuclear power plants in and around Ukraine that are online now. They supply 50% of the power to the country. Any spare missile or any stray missile is the word that hits
or any targeted missile
or a targeted missile that they claim was an accidental misfire could cause those sorts of problems. So it's a nightmare circumstance, but I'm glad you brought up that documentary.
Chernobyl Diaries. That's what it was called.
That's what it is. Yeah. And there are 3 men who, when Chernobyl was about to go from a nightmare to a nightmare beyond any perception, were a part of a suicide squad. And the idea is that the cooling water that was pooling beneath that Chernobyl plant, if the nuclear reactor had melted down and the nuclear material had hit that cooling water, it would create an instant steam bubble that would have to be released. And that pressure, scientists say, would have been big enough to essentially wipe out the whole of Europe. And these 3 men went underground to release the valves to get rid of that cooling water. And they really saved the world. And this documentary that you pointed out, what is it called again? I forgot.
Well, there's 2 of them. There was one a little bit earlier called the Chernobyl Diaries. And then there was a mini series in 2019 called just Chernobyl. And they both are basically tell the story of what went on during that time. And they're pretty fascinating.
Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bezpalov, and Boris Baranov were the 3 men that, and amazingly, they survived, by the way, and nobody thought they would.
Yes.
I think 2 of them might even still be alive, but that's an amazing story. And one of the reasons Russia is running into such problems with Ukraine is because it's sort of the feel of the Civil War here, right? We had brothers fighting against brothers. And you have family members because of Ukraine's history. Remember, it's only been independent for 20 years, that you have Russian soldiers coming in and they won't shoot people they might know.
Right.
They won't do that thing.
Well, it's interesting. Here in New York, they were interviewing a lot of people. Not only we have the largest concentration of Ukrainians outside of Ukraine here in New York. And then they were also talking to a lot of Russians. And the Russians said, we know that Putin wants us to fight and hate these people, but we look at them and they are us. Yep. They're our family. They look like us. They sound like us. They are people we know, and it's really disturbing to them. And I think that's going to be one of the hardest things that Putin has to deal with in all of this is unrest in his own country. You know, the rest of the world can turn on him, but if you don't have the people in your own country backing what you're doing, you know, it's going to be a hard battle.
Well, in the best case for the Russian people, and you'd be hard pressed to find any fair mind that would disagree with this, is if this leads to Putin being taken out, literally or figuratively, it would be the greatest thing for the Russian people.
Yeah, it sure would. Although, you know, you don't know what's next. Clearly, he's not the only guy there with this mindset. And so what you would hope is that there would be somebody with a little more moderation, a little more sanity that would come in. But
it's crazy.
Who knows?
Speaking of leadership, item number 3, the thing that we've seen again and again and again, and God bless all the men that are being asked to fight and have willingly fought and continue to fight for Ukraine.
Right.
And I am so moved by the stories of the women of Ukraine of all ages that are standing up, and not the least of which is the wife of the president, the first lady of Ukraine that you were telling me about before we started recording this show, So give me some information on her.
Well, it's kind of interesting because his last name is Zelensky. And I guess this must be a cultural thing. She is Olena Zelenska, and she's the first lady. She is absolutely beautiful. I don't know what that means, but at any rate, the pair of them met. Vladimir, that's her husband, met in university when they were 20 years old. And she has a degree in architecture. He was a stand-up comedian, as a lot of people know now. So he gets out and he starts getting pretty successful in his stand-up comedy. She, rather than practicing architecture, becomes a comedy writer for him because she's pretty funny and she understands him and adores him. He adores her. And so she's writing for him. They go on, he gets this TV show that he stars in which he plays the role of a teacher who is really upset by the corruption in the government. And so he decides to run for president. And it is, obviously loosely based on fact, but right. I mean, even from the beginning, because it was this guy and there was a lot of corruption in the country at that point. And finally, after like 3 years, he said to her, I really want to do this. And she was like, wait a minute, not what I signed up for, not the life I want, not the life I expected. And then as he began to test the waters, what may on some level have started out almost not as exactly a joke, but sort of a opportunity to campaign and kind of bitch about what's going on in the country. And then he'd go back to his TV show. He was gathering support like crazy, wound up winning with 75% of the vote. The guy that he ran against was an ardent Russia, like supporter of Russia. And so the people didn't want that. They were tired of that and brought him in. And it's an interesting thing. I mean, she has been incredibly supportive of him. She has a lot of her own passion projects.
Has she left the country?
No, she has not. She said, I'm not leaving. At least last that I could see, she did have to go into hiding with their children. They have 2 kids. I think one of them is it's a daughter who's 17. And then I think they have an 8 or 9-year-old son. And obviously, there's an awful lot of talk about them being targeted by Putin. I mean, there are rumors that Putin has as many as 400 mercenary soldiers inside of Ukraine looking to go after not just Zelensky and Zelenska, but their children as well. So she's had to be very careful, as the president. He's had to really, as much as possible, take part in all of this from some form of shelter, because it's one thing to go out there and say, I'm going to be in the midst of this. It's another thing if they lose him. I mean, he's the focal point for all these people and for this battle.
And he is a fascinating story because the men, the women, the children, everyone seems to have been able to rise up and say, they support him. He is a hero and all that. And he's all of 44? Is that what
he's 44 years old?
44 years old. And for him to be able to be as brave and as strong as he is, it seems the people of Ukraine are rather surprised about that as well. Because there's weird parallels, right? Because Trump got elected because he was famous, not because he was good at the job.
And there was a lot of talk that Trump only ran as just a platform to make noise and to shout down other people, and was as shocked as anybody that he really started to catch on.
And the bigger discussion here is fame doesn't make you a good leader, Donald Trump. But Zelensky.
Not a fan you are.
But Zelensky was a guy who got elected because he was famous. And there were tons and tons of people who said, well, we're not going to elect a comedian, and a comedian and an actor. And they did. He had some crazy number, 70% of the vote, wasn't it?
75% of the vote. People voted him in.
And he's been amazing. He really has. Now, I bet you don't know, and the only reason I do know is because I have it written in front of me, the movies he starred in, and you're going to want to rent these, or at least maybe stream them. Love in the Big City.
Okay.
One of his hit movies. Was such a big hit. There was Love in the Big City 2 and Love in the Big City 3.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. He also started a movie called Office Romance. But I think that the one you probably are going to want to see first, and pardon me on the pronunciation, but it was Reshevsky versus Napoleon, which sounds like a laugh riot to me. It sounds like one that the whole family can enjoy. And again, I get sort of a perverse joy out of the fact that he was the voice of Paddington Bear in Ukraine.
Yes, I just heard that. Heard that in the last few days. It's so.
And for Putin to be sitting in one of his palaces going, Paddington Bear is stopping me from what I want.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Paddington Bear has these enormous male parts that are scaring the entire Russian army.
You should see the stones on that bear.
Exactly.
And Servant of the People was the movie where he played
TV show.
Where he played the president.
Yeah.
But do you know the title of a Robin Williams movie, which was not a hit, where Robin Williams is a famous talk show host who runs for president?
Oh, the storyline sounds familiar, but I'm not going to even spend your time guessing.
Yeah, it's called Man of the Year. And it was not one of Robin Williams' best movies, but again,
I would not have gotten that.
Life imitating art, imitating life, right?
Right. Wow.
The Deep Six, number 4.
There is heartbreaking and uplifting news when it comes to babies and with direct ties to the United States. Tell me about this man from LA.
Yeah, it's actually a California couple who went over there, to have their the surrogate give birth to their baby. And all of this hell broke loose. The mom's name is Jessie. The dad's name is Jacob. They realized, okay, we've got the baby. We got to get out of here. The baby at 4 days old, little Vivian, was strapped into a baby carrier, and they got in a car. They had suitcases. And what they soon realized is that there was absolutely no way that they were going to be able to get through this traffic and everything else. So they put the baby on a baby Bjorn, those little things moms wear and hold the baby. And then she wrapped a big down jacket around her. The dad took both the suitcases, big rolling suitcases, and they went out into this incredibly freezing, icy wind and snow. And they walked for 8 miles to the Polish border with that new tiny baby. Yeah.
And as far as we know, they're all doing well.
They are. They got there.
Aside from the obvious heartbreak of leaving and the stress and all that, they're doing well.
Yeah, the baby was obviously brought into a hospital in Poland, given the thumbs up, and the family is already back now in Los Angeles. What can you imagine that you leave Los Angeles, you're going to have your little baby, you go through all of this, and then you're back in sunny LA. It's like the most weird. You can't even imagine that.
Dream.
Yeah, dream. And then there's another really short, beautiful story. I saw last week this mother trying to take care of her kids, really lovely young mother in the metro in Kyiv. She went down underground, which tons of people did. It was the one place where they felt safe from all the missiles and the bombs. Mm-hmm. She was holding bottles of water and plastic bags with snacks, and she had a couple of little children with her. And somebody was interviewing her, and they said, why don't you look terrified? And she said, I have very small children. I can't be scared if I don't want them to be scared.
There you go. No, there you go.
I just thought, wow, yeah, that's being a mom. Yeah. It's understanding that grit your teeth, comfort them, don't look frightened, because that only exacerbates the situation. And
by the way, the psychologists have spoken out a lot, and it's the week plus that it's been since Putin started this nightmare, about how to talk to your kids, whether it's here safely in America or in the middle of trouble anywhere. And one of the things they talked about was, no matter how stressed out you are, be reassuring, but don't lie. If they have questions, answer the questions. And if you're watching TV news or listening to radio news or podcasts or whatever the case may be cognizant of those little eyes and ears that are around you.
Well, and also in speaking for myself, bigger eyes and ears. I've been talking to my 22-year-old son, and there's a lot of nervousness on his part and on the part of his friends that, that we're going to get sucked into a world war.
Yep.
And they're fearful about what that means. And it's interesting because my 22-year-old was very worried about being drafted and what's that going to mean for me and what could happen.
Right.
My 26-year-old Jake, who we know and love and we've talked to on this podcast, he wants to volunteer to be a writer. He wants to be a journalist. He wants to go cover the war. And I said, well, that's a much bigger undertaking than, he's a spectacular writer. That's kind of his thing.
He would be phenomenal at it. And I say this with love. I hope he doesn't go.
And he's a very calm person. And I would imagine he'd stay calm. But yes, I say this with love as well. I hope he doesn't go.
So and by the way, I've got a story that sort of ties to what you just brought up about Jake, but there is one other baby story. And I need to thank my daughter, Amy Cochran, brilliant and a news junkie. And she tipped me off to several stories. Some we're talking about today and some others. This other story involves a couple named Alex Spector and Irma Nunez, and are doing everything they can to keep their newborn babies, Lenny and Moisha, who were born to a Ukrainian surrogate. The twins were born at only 32 and a half weeks, 2 months early. It was a very dangerous time.
Sure.
And the babies, due to the small size, are facing terrifying health complications at a time where hospitals are moving patients to the basements because it's the farthest away from a building that could collapse on top of you. And it's an ongoing story, but they've done a good job of getting it out to the public. And we're hoping the government can work with them to get these babies out, because one of the underreported stories, in my opinion, is how the refugees have been able to get out. And thanks to countries like Poland that have taken in so many, there's problems with all of it. And there's problems with some people who want to get out who haven't been able to, students who are not Ukrainian nationals who are left at the side of the road because Ukrainian refugees are put on buses first. All those things are legitimate conversations. But if it's in your heart, pray for these two little babies and their parents who are desperately trying to get them out here.
Well, and one of the things that's is so disturbing about this whole situation is in the beginning, the Russians said they were only going to target military facilities and the communications and things like that. And in fact, they've been targeting schools, hospitals, children's hospitals, you name it. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's awful. No, it's absolutely awful. Let's move on to another story that's important to this Ukrainian story.
The Deep Six, number 5.
Charity. What can we do? It can be frustrating, right? Because we're on the other side of the world. How can we help?
Right.
And one of the ways you can help is to contribute any money you're able, or if possible, volunteer time, if that works, to charitable organizations. Now, you were talking about being a journalist in Ukraine. There's two that stand out in my mind. Again, these are two amazing women from CNN. One is Clarissa Ward, who has been all over this Ukrainian story.
Right.
And this is a mom of two from London who has put herself right in the middle of this.
Yeah.
And has been able to tell the stories of the women there and the people there with just such great empathy and warmth. And this is a woman who was in Syria. She goes everywhere.
Afghanistan, did you say she was? Yeah.
Arwa Damon is another, also from CNN. And Arwa Damon had been on so many war fronts that last year she started a charity, which is getting some ground. And this is the one we would encourage you, one of the ones we would encourage you to consider. It's called the International Network for Aid, Relief, and Assistance, INARA.org. And this organization is specifically set up to help children who are injured in a war zone and can't get out of that war zone to get proper medical help.
Can you give me the name of that again?
Just go with INARA.org, INARA.org, and you can help immediately because they put together these medical kits that can help save children's lives or keep them in the best shape they can be until they get appropriate medical help. So God bless her for doing that. No Just kidding. A couple others quickly. United Help Ukraine. And we'll put these in a note that we'll attach to the podcast. So you can check it out in the notes section. United Help Ukraine. That is another very important organization. The International Red Cross as well. And Nova Ukraine, an American nonprofit that works with activists and other organizations to make sure humanitarian aid has gotten to vulnerable groups and others. So Red Cross, Nova Ukraine, United Help Ukraine, and INARA.org. Just a handful from some amazing people that are getting it done.
The Deep Six, number 6.
Go on to item number 6. You have a charity tie that actually involves
Yeah, we
something that could
gotta
be fun for people.
right. We're gonna lighten it up a little bit. They are talking about all these craft brewers in the Czech Republic are joining forces to help Ukraine. So they say 40 breweries will participate in the Drink for Ukraine Beer Festival at Prague's Congress Center. All the brewers are contributing about 100 different kinds of beer free of charge for the festival.
Wow.
They will also donate, and I don't know what these are, beer rarities that will be auctioned off.
What's a beer rarity? Like an old can of Schlitz?
Yes, right. Some think beer from like 75 years ago.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe signs that hung in bars. I don't know. They say all the money from the sales and auction are going to be sent to the People in Need humanitarian organization that is sending aid to Ukraine.
Well, this totally makes sense that it's in and around Prague. I was in Prague a couple of years ago, and one of the guides we had made a proud point of saying that in Prague and in the old Czech Republic, they drink more beer per person than anywhere else on the planet. So it makes sense that it would be a home game for them.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the coordinator of this, Karolina, Kraustakova, said, yeah, close enough. What are you going to check me on that? She said, we help by doing what we know best, and what we know best is good beer.
There you go.
Now, on that same note, have you seen any of the footage of people pouring bottles of Russian vodka into drains and waterways, that kind of protesting?
Yeah, one of the ways, it's not a tea party, it's a vodka party where you throw Russian vodka away.
Right. So you need to know what's Russian and what's not. So I'm going to have you guess what is a Russian vodka and what isn't.
Well, you've come to the right place because, as you know, I know my booze. All right. So
from a distance.
So you're going to give me a label? You're going to give me a name?
Yes. Stolichnaya.
That's absolutely Russian. It's got to be.
Nope.
What?
That brand and its owner, Yuri Scheffler, were actually exiled from Russia 20 years ago. It's from Latvia now.
Oh, the old Latvian Russian trick.
We pulled a little fast one on you there.
Right.
Smirnoff.
Again, the name says Russian, but based on the fact that I missed the first one, I'm going to go no. Smirnoff is not.
It's American, believe it or not.
Come on.
So somebody said we need to sound. It's kind of like Haagen-Dazs is American, but it kind of sounds like it's from Norway or something.
So I accidentally got that one right. Okay,
you accidentally got that right. How about this? Beluga Noble.
You're a Beluga Noble. No, what is it again? Give it to me again.
Beluga Noble.
Beluga Noble. It sounds like a very proud whale. Beluga is caviar. Caviar is Russian. Yes, it's Russian.
You're right. How about Zyr?
Is that the entire name? Or?
Yes, ZYR.
No, not Russian.
Nope, that's Russian.
So I'm 2 for 4. I'm running at 50%. I'm not even a passing.
Yeah. Svedka.
Oh, yeah. SVEDKA, I think, right on the label? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely Russian.
Definitely Swedish. How about Grey Goose?
How about who knows?
Yeah, that's French.
Okay.
I knew that the
how
French
is
make
Grey
vodka.
Goose French?
Yeah. And then the last one is a pretty easy guess. It's called Russian Standard.
Okay, I'm going to say that pretty safely. That's Russian.
Look, you finished with a win there.
Yeah, and 4 for 7, which is going to bring me in at about a 58. I just failed the booze test.
Yeah. And there is that feeling like, wow, I was so relieved when I found out Stoli was not, because I have this Stoli blueberry vodka upstairs. And I was thinking, oh, God, I really would like to be able to have a sip of that, but I'm not going to do it. But would I toss it away? You know,
when you really have to question how committed are you to the safety of the rest of the world?
Right. Based on my vodka consumption.
Check out the show notes. We'll give you those links to charities and a few more that were not mentioned. And please tell other people, not just about the Deep Six, but about what you're willing to do to help others, because the world has to step up for Ukraine and do it right now.
Yeah, we're in a precarious place, no doubt.
Thank you, Patty Steele.
Thank you, Steve. What's your last name? Cochran?
Stoley. Steve Stoley. Yeah, Steve Stoley.
Okay. Bye, Steve Stoley.
And we're back next time with another edition of The Deep Six.
Thanks for listening. The Deep Six. Subscribe, rate, follow, or review at pattysteele.com or cochranshow.com.
I thank you for listening. I'll ask you to share this episode, even if you've never shared an episode before, to tell people about what we're talking about today. And in a way, we could help educate others. So it's well worth the effort, I think. And I thank Ross Cochran, as always, the executive producer, for putting all of this together. Before I wrap this up, if you are a regular listener, you know we're going on a break, a hiatus, if you will. I will come back as news warrants to talk about things here on the Live from My Office part of the Deep Six. But the Deep Six itself will continue with episodes dropping on Fridays. So keep coming back for those. I have to mention one last thing. The politics of the world are a dangerous place. And the corruption we see in Vladimir Putin is something that we know. Not the violence and the murder necessarily, but the theft is certainly there. Michael Madigan was arrested. Michael Madigan was indicted. And Michael Madigan, in all likelihood, with 22 counts over his head, is going to go to jail. Yep, he's almost 80. Yep, he can afford really good lawyers. And maybe they'll put this off long enough that he'll die before he has to be locked up. But in the meantime, I want to thank my friend Pat Brady and others who have joined me over the years, on the radio specifically, to talk about the crook that we knew he was, and salute the federal authorities and the extensive investigation they've done to prove that fact now. He was, as my friend Chuck Todd pointed out, the last of the great state bosses. He kept a low profile while he managed his crime syndicate, if you will. Illinois is better off, and it's a better day for Illinois' future to know that Michael Madigan is going to have justice served. My only question is, because I don't believe in party, I believe in character, he's a Democrat. What about the Republicans? Don't you think Donald Trump should be next? Thank you for listening. And again, if you're inclined, please say a prayer for and help any way economically that you can the people of Ukraine. God bless you and your family. This is Steve Cochran for Live from My Office and the Deep Six.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.